First of all, thank you for coming. I'm sorry to disappoint you that Republicans continue to keep our promises, and we just, again, from all your questions all week long, will the NDAA pass this week? Not many of you ever asked me about the policy, so I want to spend some moment. Your first question, yes, it passed. Now let's actually get through to what we promised the American public what we'd do. I first want to start thanking Chairman Rogers and all the members of the Armed Services Committee for the work they did. I'm grateful for their leadership on this important issue. House Republicans have made a commitment to America that we would fight for a nation that is safe. Today, we kept that promise by passing the National Defense Authorization Act. Under this bill, men and women in uniform who make sacrifices for our nation every day will receive the biggest pay raise in decades. We all know they deserve it. Radical programs that have forced our troops at the expense of readiness are now eliminated. Cutting-edge technology that is essential for the future of this country and to keep freedom around the world in the rise of China and Russia will receive more investment than we've watched in the past. And taxpayers will save more than $40 billion as this bill roots out wasteful spending. The real question that you never asked me that I wish you would, why did the Democrats vote no? Technically, it's a bipartisan vote, but 4 Democrats vote with us. Are the rest of the Democrats against a pay raise for their veterans? Are they against deterring China for a safe future? Are they against rooting out wasteful spending? Because they all voted against it today. They can claim a lot of things. But the biggest issue they claim why they voted against, they voted for just last year. It's a good thing that Republicans are in the majority, but it's more important that we keep our promises to America and to our men and women who serve to defend us. And today is exactly what we did. With that, let me call up our leader, Leader Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good to see all of you here. Today was an important victory for our men and women in uniform who risked their lives to keep us safe. And it was also an important victory for every American in this country that wants to see our military focused on our enemies abroad, not on wokeness and all of the indoctrination attempts you're seeing within the Pentagon. And there was a massive rebuke of that far-left ideology and the push that we've seen under the Biden administration. These aren't things that Barack Obama did when he was president. Joe Biden has tried to change the focus of our military. And what you saw today and over the last week is Republicans and Democrats coming together to say, let's focus on our enemies all around the world. There are still bad actors out there that want to do us harm. There are still countries like China who are investing in a different kind of military that we need to be focused on. And as the Speaker pointed out, Chairman Rogers and all of the members of the House Armed Services Committee spent weeks and months putting together a bill that refocuses our military on their core mission, the mission that under the Constitution we as a Congress have an obligation to go out and fulfill and protect and fund. And that's what this NDAA does. It refocuses on the real threats to America as a free nation and as the leader of the free world, and allows us to get back focused on that role. Yeah, it's a shame that Democrats walked away from that. It's a shame that Democrats walked away from a 5% pay raise to our men and women in uniform who deserve it because they wanted to defend a far-left woke indoctrination ideology. That's not the focus of the Department of Defense. I am proud of what our members did coming together in a difficult time to say, let's get that focus back where it needs to be on defending America and protecting our friends around the world and standing up to the bad actors, which there are, and they're getting more and more aggressive. We need to be more and more focused. That's what today's vote produced. And the gentleman who put together that vote coalition is our whip, Mr. Emmer.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Ben. First, I want to thank Speaker for his leadership, the Majority Leader, Elise, everybody who's up here. I want to thank the best Chief Deputy Whip that anybody could have in the entire Whip team, Guy Reschenthaler and the entire team. And I want to thank our members. I want to thank our members for remembering why they were sent here. They're sent here to put America first and American safety and security first, and that's exactly what they did today. Everybody said this couldn't happen. Again, as Guy was telling me on the way down here, I guess this was our next first big test. If you think about it, we've had 6 months now of Kevin McCarthy and our House Republican majority, Speaker McCarthy. And if the last 6 months have proven anything, and I hope you're starting to take notice, it's that House Republicans get stuff done. This is the group that has been doing the work. We've beaten the odds time and time again to deliver on our promises to the American people. When the talking heads here in Washington, and I'm not necessarily talking about you folks, but I might be. When the talking heads here in Washington insist that we can't pass things, we have proven them wrong every time, and today is no exception. Today, House Republicans led the way in supporting and strengthening our military by passing the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act. The core tenets of this year's NDAA are simple. Modernize and bolster our military, take care of our men and women in uniform, and cut out the woke garbage that the Biden administration has forced on our service members. It's a shame, as you've heard already, that House Democrats couldn't put politics aside for one vote to join us in equipping our military heroes. Unfortunately, today proves once again that championing their partisan left-wing agenda is more important to the House Democrats than continuing the 6-decade tradition of coming together to strengthen our national defense and give service members the largest pay increase they have received in 20 years. But once again, House Republicans made up for where the Democrats have failed, and we will continue bringing along President Biden and the fellow members of his party along with us as we govern for the American people. And with that, our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Well, thank you to our whip and this entire leadership team. I also want to thank all of the members of the House Republican Conference. Today is a historic day. House Republicans have delivered yet another result on our commitment to America, a nation that is safe. This is particularly important to me in my district. I've been on the Armed Services Committee since I was first elected. I'm a senior member, a former subcommittee chair and ranker, and I have the honor of representing the 10th Mountain Division at Fort Drum, the most deployed division in the U.S. Army since 9/11. This NDAA strengthens our national security. It invests in our men and women in uniform. It invests in our military families. There are a number of provisions that I'm proud to have delivered. Tens of millions of dollars of investment in missile defense that will go at Fort Drum in upstate New York. The Service Member Parents' Bill of Rights that got bipartisan support in committee and is in the final bill. Investment in military housing and military child care, as well as the largest pay raise increase in the last 20 years. I'm so honored to serve with so many newly elected members on the House Armed Services Committee. One of our rising stars, and you're going to hear from two today, is Jen Kiggins, who is a Navy helicopter pilot, a former state senator, and the representative for Virginia Beach. Jen.
Thank you so much for being here with us today to celebrate the passage of the NDAA. One reason I ran for Congress was to restore strength for our military. It's so important that we not only fight for our service members and their families every day, but that we give them the resources and the tools they need to get the job done to defend our great nation. And this bill does a couple of things. It maintains the number of ships that the Marine Corps asked for, which was 31. We pushed back against the Biden administration, the number of ships they wanted to cut. We have to maintain that number of ships. We are behind when we look at our adversaries like China and where they are. So it's important to, again, protect our shipbuilding and our ship repair industry and to give these guys the tools that they deserve. Another really important win for us today was that this NDAA focused on quality of life issues for our servicemen and women, and again, and their families. For myself as a nurse practitioner, my focus was mental health for our military service members, and this bill does that. We had many amendments that got into the NDAA that expanded accessibility and availability of mental health care services for our military men and women. That's so important to us. In addition to the millions of dollars for child care and housing, so many of quality of life issues that we've neglected over the past few years that we need to continue to focus on Our military is great. Our military is ready to fight tonight. We are a strong fighting force. We are the best in the world. And I plan to keep it that way with the help of my colleagues and the other members of the Armed Services Committee. So thank you so much for paying attention to this important issue. And it's my honor to introduce a colleague and fellow Navy veteran, Nick LaLota from New York.
Thanks, shipmate. I appreciate that. Awesome words. I'm excited. As Americans, we're blessed to live in the greatest nation the world has ever known, and that's in large part because of our men and women who wear our nation's uniform. As the stepson of a Navy man, the brother of a Marine, the grandson of a Coast Guardsman, and a Navy veteran myself, and a member of the Armed Services Committee, I'm incredibly proud that we came together to pass the NDAA today. This is a good bill. It's a great bill, in fact, that increases pay, soldier pay, improves housing, education, child care funding, takes on China, cuts back wasteful spending, and ensures our military is the most lethal fighting force the world has ever known. I'm proud of the leadership of the folks behind me, and especially in the Armed Services Committee under Chairman Rogers, bringing us together, talking about, debating several amendments, both in committee and on the floor, that got us to the point that we passed this awesome bill that will fund our military. And I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues to ensure that we remain the greatest nation the world has ever known. Thanks so much. Back to the Speaker.
Thank you very much. With that, let's open up for questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Very excited
Speaker.
you look.
Yes. One, how do you reconcile that the Senate product will be different and that it'll be difficult, if not impossible, to have the culture war amendments in the conference version? And second, the ball's now in the Democrat-led Senate's hands. What message is the House sending to the Senate with this bill?
Just focus on the military. Stop using taxpayer money to do their own wokeism. A military cannot defend themselves if you train them in woke. We don't want Disneyland to train our military. We want our men and women in the military to have every defense possible, and that's what our bill does. The money focuses directly on their quality of life and, more importantly, on the investment. When you sit and look, and the whole concept of where I came up with the Select Committee on China was walking the graves of Normandy. As I walked those graves, I looked at those names. They're all about the same age. They came from different faith, from the Star of David to crosses. They all died at the same time. And I thought, as a policymaker, because I walked right next to then at the time Speaker Pelosi, and I wondered, what could those policymakers have done that that day would have never happened? First and foremost, you put your politics aside and you focus on the military so war never becomes. That's what we did today in the NDAA. What the Democrats did was put their politics before the men and women who serve. They said no to a pay raise. They said no to an investment that sent the wrong message to our adversaries around the world. Having a different bill in the Senate, you can ask me that on any bill that comes out of the floor. And you know what? I hope the bills that come out of the House are different than the bills that come out of that Schumer's in charge of. And you know what? We designed our government to be this way, because then we go to conference and we find where we can unite. There was a bipartisan vote on here, but the majority of Democrats decided to vote against giving our military a pay raise. I think that's wrong.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. When Republicans talk about how you were able to assemble the votes to pass this, they say that certain commitments were made on AUMF votes. Can you talk us through what that looks like?
You know what's interesting? You guys say the same thing every time, okay? So let me just come back. What commitment was made?
That's what I'm asking you.
Well, how can you bring something up if something didn't create? You know, it's so interesting to me. You guys live in fantasy.
Tom Cole said in the Rules Committee that you, the Speaker, made a commitment that there will be a vote on AOMF 5%.
No. What I told everybody from the process is, does AUMF go through the armed services? Does it? Again, it doesn't have the jurisdiction. Do any of you know what committee deals with AUMF? Foreign Affairs. Was this a Foreign Affairs bill? No. And so, Foreign Affairs is taking up AUMF. Would I want to something as serious as an AUMF vote to take 2 minutes on the floor? No. So I've made the commitment to the American public. that we will go through the committee of jurisdiction. AUMF is working its way through Foreign Affairs. It's scheduled to come back in September, and it's something as serious as this, we're not going to spend 2 minutes on. We are going to do, I don't know how long it's going to take to understand the Democrats no longer control this place. The establishment no longer controls Washington on the House side. We have opened this place up. Bills will go through committee. We're going to get amendments on the floor. People are going to have input. You're not going to get jammed on a bill. You're going to have time to read it. And you know what? The AUMF is going to get done, even though they haven't been able to do it for years, and we'll solve this problem exactly how it's structured to happen. It'll go through Foreign Affairs, and it'll come to us in September, and we won't have a 2-minute vote to decide whether we go to give authorization to go to war or not, on something that's been lingering out there for 20 years. I think it's too serious and too important, and it's the commitment I made to the American public. So no, I didn't do something special on this bill. I just kept the promise we made from the very beginning.
Speaker McCarthy, what do you
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, and another example of this, Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that you told her she would be on the conference committee. Is that true?
Yes, I asked Marjorie if she would be on the conference committee.
And are you going to insist on a regular order conference committee?
Yeah. I mean, not to repeat myself, but I'm going to love the day that I come in, that you're going to sit back and say, oh, you told me this 6 months ago, that's why you're doing it, instead of thinking it's something special. What I firmly believe in any conference is that you have to be reflective of our entire conference. So there'll be a number of people who serve. And I requested if Marjorie would be able to serve, to be able to work on, she has a number of issues that she cares about in the military, and she agreed to be able to serve on that, along with a number of other people that will. Well, I don't want to take all your attention away, so wait and you'll be able to see the list when I provide it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So before the NDAA vote, the House Freedom Caucus held a press conference touting the conservative victories in the bill. I want to ask you if you agree with one of your colleagues' comments today, Clay Higgins of Louisiana. He said, we've gradually shifted the center of gravity of the Republican conference towards the right. What do you think about it?
I would think the election has shifted, that we actually focus on exactly what we had said we would do. Have you ever read The Commitment to America? Okay. So what have we done since we've taken the majority? We have kept our commitment to America, and that's exactly what we're doing. Yes, sir.
On Ukraine, in addition to, I guess, Carol putting Ms. Taylor Greene on the conference committee, on Gates' amendments, there were 7 Republicans who indicated they were basically willing to cut and run for helping out Ukraine. Should Ukraine be worried about U.S. support in light of that? That's a third of your conference.
No. Did you see the overall vote?
This
I know. You asked me a question. I'm answering a question. So what did this bill pass by? On a bipartisan vote. What was the Ukraine amendment? What did that pass by? It failed with over 300 votes the other way. So you know math as well as I do, and that's an overwhelming support here. So I'd read it as that. Yes, sir.
Is there any concern at all, and Tony acknowledged yesterday, he said it's unfortunate and a missed opportunity that this bill was going to be a close to party line vote, coming out of committee was extremely bipartisan, and then you got all these amendments. Is there concern that the military is getting politicized recently?
It's a concern to me that Democrats have politicized this. Because sit and think for exactly what your question is, and I would think Tony would think this the same way. The Democrats said they're not going to vote for giving the military a pay raise, for giving the military an investment to make the world safer, unless they had wokeism. They said they would not pay and give them a 5% pay raise unless they go against something they voted for a year prior in a Hyde Amendment. So yes, it is concerning to me that the Democrats have gone that far. For 4 decades, for 40 years, up until last year, they supported Hyde. What changed? What changed? What made them vote? I'm sure you asked them the question. Why would they vote against the military on something they had voted for, even the minority leader, a year before? And then he criticized people from New York on something that he actually voted for as well? That's hypocrisy. That's playing politics. That's not right. To do that to our men and women in uniform? We have 2 veterans right up here. Jen Kiggins flew helicopters. Her husband flew F-18s. Her children went into the military. Nick, same thing. What do you think they think when they look back? And when they get an answer from the Democrats? It may have been good enough to vote for it a year before. And what does it actually mean? It means that they want to take taxpayer money to spend on something other than the military. And all we're saying on the NDAA, let's use the money on the military. So, yes, ma'am.
Do you think that this was the right vehicle to legislate around things like the Pentagon's policy on providing care for or support for?
How, can you tell me the jurisdiction of where this would be done then?
What do you mean?
Well, do you think it doesn't belong in the NDA if you're talking about how to? Well, it's not just me, the parliamentarian does. See, what's very interesting here is, for 40 years, we have decided no matter where you sit on this issue, don't use taxpayer money for it. And that's called the Hyde Amendment. It is the military who, a few people in the brass, who are probably taking orders from somebody else in the White House now, to go against the law. All we simply say is reinstate where everybody has stood for 40 years and focus on the military. You're concerned about wokeism. I'm concerned about wokeism too. I think our men and women that I listen to today that are having a hard time to meet our recruiting levels. And when you talk to a number of people, I just read an article, I'm not sure if somebody in this room wrote it, that we have men and women who are veterans from the military who are now not encouraging their children to take the same path based upon what's being trained today. I think we need to change course. So your question earlier, has the Congress changed? Yes, the Congress has changed. We're keeping the commitment we said we would do. We're focusing on the principles that make America stronger and freer and keep us safer so we will never be in war again. Last question, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Even though it was just a small number, what do you make of your fellow members who did not support this bill, particularly those like Congressman Crane, who pushed some of these amendments and ultimately didn't support final passage? And speaking of Congressman Crane, what is your reaction to his remarks yesterday on the floor referring to African Americans as colored? I know he said that he misspoke, but is that acceptable?
That's not acceptable. I'll take him at his word that he misspoke. I have never heard him use that before, so you would have to ask him about that. I hope you have all a great weekend. I look forward to your question on Monday. Will we be able to pass a bill next week as well? So I think we will, and I look forward to you asking me questions about policy too sometime next week. Take care.
Thank you very much.